seconds.
Can I start now, Ibrahim?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, come on, let's begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا واخلاصا وتوفيقا يا ارحم الراحمين. So we're still on the forward of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah 40, and we're on page number 2. We're on the last paragraph, which begins with the people of knowledge have compiled numerous books. Before that, the previous paragraph, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah narrated the hadith of compiling or preserving 40 hadith. We mentioned that the Imam here has mentioned the names of 9 companions. I told you there were 14 in total. And I just want to focus on the last sentence of this paragraph, which reads, those who memorize hadith. What he means by memorizing hadith are the muhaddithun, the hadith specialists, the experts in the science of hadith, agree that it is a weak hadith, even though it is narrated through many different paths. So it's a weak hadith, even though it's narrated through many different paths. Here I want to mention 2 things in relation to this. The first is, maybe at this point, it is worth knowing the 2 components of a hadith. So a given hadith will have 2 parts to it. The first one is called the isnad, or the chain of transmission, and the second one is called matn, which is the statement itself. So imagine, for example, I have in front of me Usad Nisar. He takes a hadith from me, so he will then be introduced to my chain of transmission, that I narrated from my teacher, who narrated from his 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 teacher, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. So this is what we call the chain of transmission. The chain of transmission comes about due to the loss or absence of a direct interaction or observation. For example, if a companion saw the Prophet ﷺ do or say something, he will say, I heard and saw the Prophet ﷺ do XYZ. Done. There's no chain of transmission, so to speak, because he has seen, it's a direct observation. The chain of transmission comes about during the life of the junior companions, or we can just say the tabi'een. Who are the tabi'een? These are the followers, we call them, right? The followers. These are those individuals who did not see the Prophet ﷺ directly, and therefore would only have come to learn whatever they have learned about the Prophet ﷺ through an intermediary. As someone who is not a companion. A companion, inshallah, right? I don't want to go into a long definition of a companion, but at the very least, it's someone who saw the Prophet ﷺ in a state of belief, as a believer. So someone who embraced Islam and has now seen the Prophet ﷺ is a companion. So a tabi'i is someone who is a Muslim, but has not seen or heard the Prophet ﷺ directly. Therefore, there has to be a link. There has to be a or many links. He can't have just said, oh, I heard this. Now twin this with the fact that during this period, you have civil wars. We have civil wars. We have dissent, theological dissent, political dissent. We have propaganda. We have lies. So it's in this context that the need for asking a person to disclose his sources or his intermediary is born. There is a famous companion, you may have heard his name in a different context, called Ibn Sirin, the one who has the dream book, right? Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah, he mentions this. Right? Ibn Sirin had met over 150 companions, by the way. Right? So he's a senior follower, he's a senior tabi'i. He mentions that there was a time when we wouldn't ask for the intermediary. The intermediary being name your men. Where are you getting this from? Right? He said there was a time where we wouldn't ask people names, or we wouldn't ask people who and where are you getting this from. Then he says once the fitna took place, the fitna over here referring to the civil war, فَلَمَّا وَقَعَتِ الْفِتْنَةُ قُلْنَا سُمُّوا لَنَا رِجَالَكُمْ. Once the civil war began and things got out of hand where people are lying, these are not the companions who were lying, by the way. During the time of the civil war, now you can say the senior companions have all passed away, and the junior companions. So these are companions who were 8, 7, 14 when the Prophet had passed away, who have now come of age, who are now 50, 60 years old. So they would say, name your men. Yeah? Name your men. Where are you getting this from? And then they would see, that this is Ibn Sirin saying, that we would then ask for them to reveal their men, and we would see if this person was a dissenter or not. If this person was a rabble rouser, we wouldn't take his narration. And if he was not a rabble rouser but a genuine authority, then we would take it. So this is when the chain of transmission is born. There were other factors also involved. I may have mentioned this before. The practical factor over here is that writing hasn't yet developed in ways that we know it today. There are just too many variables. Writing would look like a scribble. Writing would look like a scribble. Therefore, you need to credit. Therefore, you need to ascertain that your writing is accurate. And how would you do this? Simple. You create your own notes, and then you read it to me. So let's say I have a book. Because remember, in those days, they didn't have the publishing houses that we have today. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to prepare your own copy, and then you would read it to the author. So imagine this is my book. You would write it out in your own hand, and then you would come and read my own text to me in your writing, and then if it's accurate, I'll sign it off. That this person's transmission is accurate. This continues right until we can say around the 3rd, 4th, 5th century. Because paper comes into the Arab world around the 150 Hijri, 200 Hijri. And this also is around the time when writing starts to take the sort of form that we know of today. Without the tashkil, by the way, right? So without the i'rab, without the harakat. But a distinction between the fa and the ba, and let's say the ta and the tha is made. Otherwise, it looks like a line. If you want, I can show you different like styles of writing and see whether you can work it out or not. But that's what it is. So there's a practical aspect to this. So the isnad is important because it allows us to what? To grade a hadith or to see whether or not the hadith is credible. There are two things that a hadith expert or critic is looking for in a transmitter. In order for a hadith to be sahih, so this is a term, right? Sahih, authentic hadith or a accredited hadith. So the isnad, right? The chain of transmission. The hadith critic is looking for two things. The first thing he's looking for is the chain to be connected. There's no discrepancies, there's no gaps within the chain. Now what does that mean? I just said to you right now that a follower is someone who has not seen the Prophet ﷺ. So if a follower simply says, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say XYZ, you can be certain that he himself didn't hear the Prophet directly. Because if that was the case, then he'd be a companion. So a link is missing. A link is missing. This is what I mean by gaps within the transmission. Or let's say, for example, you come to a tabi'i, and narrating from a tabi'i is someone who has come 4 centuries later. So this person who's come 4 centuries later could not have met the tabi'i under any circumstances. So there's what we call a gap or a lacuna, right? That gap is problematic. Why? Because there is the possibility that his links are all authentic. in which case the hadith is authentic. But because we don't know, there's also the possibility that those links are also not authentic. Yeah? So when a tabi'i, for example, says, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say X, Y, Z, his intermediary could be someone who's credible, could be a companion, but could also be someone who's not a companion, in which case the hadith is suspect. Yeah, so that's one aspect of the isnad. The second aspect of the isnad is the transmitter himself. The transmitter, his and himself. There are two aspects to the transmitter. The first one is his integrity. How is he as a person? Is he a liar? Is he careless in his religion? Does he take religion seriously? Because what he will be transmitting is all matters of religion. And so we don't take it lightly. And the second thing we look for is accuracy. Now, this is very important. Accuracy. So let's say, for example, there are 15 people on this side of the room. Imagine I am the teacher, transmitter. So I am dictating to you, this is what it would look like in those days, right? I would sit down and I would dictate nice and slowly. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ad-deenu an-nasihatu, that religion is sincerity, and you would write it down. And you write it down. So we have people who are what? Copying. Now, the hadith critic, in order to determine the accuracy of said transmitter, will cross-reference. So there's 15 of you in this classroom. He will collect 15 transmitters, all of your notes, all of your transmissions to your students, and then he will see, just as an example, right? He sees that 14 of you have written, religion is sincerity. And Ibrahim wrote, religion is not sincerity. What's this? It's an anomaly, right? This now holds him suspect, because he has narrated something that goes against all 14. That tells you he's got it wrong. That tells you he got it wrong. So what happens? We highlight this as a mistake, as an error. Do you understand how this works? This is the basis of hadith criticism. So when they say the hadith is weak, you have to ascertain what is weak about the isnad. What is weak about the hadith? Is it that there's a gap in the chain, or is it that there's a problem with the transmitter? If there's a problem with the transmitter, I told you that there are two types. Number one, transmitter is careless, or he makes mistakes. He makes mistakes. Now look, as being human, we can all make mistakes. But what makes a transmitter suspect is if his mistakes are more so than his correct transmission. So for example, if Ibrahim's transmissions in total are 1,000, and in 1,000 he makes 2 mistakes, he's a superb transmitter. To make from 1,000 to make 2 errors is wonderful, because that's what we want. We want to see more correct transmission than incorrect transmission, more accuracy than inaccuracy. Because we accept we're human, we can make a mistake or 2, right? But if out of 1,000 transmissions he's got 500 wrong, or he's got 600 wrong, now they'll say this person is careless. So this hadith is now suspect. This hadith is now weak. Now understand this. There are weaknesses that can be alleviated. For example, I said to you, let's say Ibrahim, inshallah he's not like this, let's assume that he made 600 mistakes in total from 1,000 transmissions. So you come across one hadith that has Ibrahim in it. So you will say the hadith is weak. Why? Because there's Ibrahim in it. Now, but what you can do is you can corroborate by looking at 14 other students, 14 other transmissions, and if you find that this one transmission for which we considered Ibrahim suspect is actually being authenticated by you guys, the hadith is good. So I repeat myself one more time. If Ibrahim, we have said, is suspect. Why? Because time and time again we found that he's careless, he makes mistakes, right? So you come across one hadith. Its wording is, let's say, ad-deenu nasiha. This is a hadith, ad-deenu nasiha, religion is sincerity. It's got Ibrahim in it, that's why we consider it suspect, we consider it weak. Then what happens is, you cross-reference. You look at the 14 other students in the classroom, and you find actually they are narrating exactly what Ibrahim is narrating. So here we will say the hadith is authentic. Why is it authentic? Because it's being corroborated. Because it's being corroborated, cross-reference, and we found that it is the case So here we said he's careless doesn't mean that he has a track record of 110% errors. No, he's got it right. So we will accept it. So here I just wanted to mention, that this is an intricate science. It's not an analysis, hadith analysis is an intricate science. I wanted to explain to you what is a weak hadith and what is a authentic hadith. So a sahih hadith, remember this, a sahih hadith is a hadith that has been transmitted via an unbroken chain in which each link, i.e. each transmitter, is upright and accurate. Yeah. That's your hadith, sahih hadith then. And a weak hadith will have deficiencies in one of these. Okay? It'll have deficiencies in one of these. Now, this brings me to 2 points. Number one, when the scholars say that weak hadiths can be accepted in Fadail A'mal, it's not a blanket statement that you take any hadith. No, we look at the nature of the weakness. So as I mentioned to you, if the weakness is that we've got a transmitter or said transmitter who's careless, then we can corroborate for this, we can account for this by cross-reference. But if the transmitter is a well-known liar and there is no corroboration, this brings the hadith into question, and it's difficult to corroborate this. It's difficult to make a case for this hadith. Right? That's one point. Second point, those who said that we will take the weak hadith in Fadail A'mal, again lay down 3 conditions. And it's these 3 conditions that I want to bring your attention to. Number one, they said that the hadith of virtue needs to correspond or corroborate not with another hadith, but with a precedent. With a precedent. Now, what is a precedent? It's something that is being established or something that's already established in the religion. I can give you an example. Is wudu a proven fact of our religion or not? Wudu. So whether there is a hadith, weak hadith or not weak hadith, wudu as an act stands. Wudu as an act stands. Right? Those of you who did fiqh last year, we read the ayah of wudu. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila salati faghsilu wujuhakum ila akhiri, to the very end. Or you who believe, when you stand up for prayer, then wash your faces, wash your arms up to your elbows, wipe your heads and wash your feet up to the ankles. So wudu as an act is established, with or without any hadith. Now, if you come across a hadith from the likes of Ibrahim, from the category of Ibrahim that says, whoever makes wudu and let's say he washes his face thoroughly, will find that his face will glow in the hereafter like the sun. Like the sun. So bright that all the sins are like stars and they don't disappear. Something like this. So now the hadith is weak. There's no corroboration. There's no corroboration from other narrations. Is there a precedent for this? We're saying, yeah. The precedent is what? That wudu is already established. This meets condition number 1. That it needs to come under a principle or a precedent. That's what we mean. Are we okay with this? Like, I'll give you another example. Someone gives a weak hadith that whoever after wudu takes 10 steps to his right and does assalamu alaikum to his companion will have 120,000 hoods in Jannah. Some hadith like this. The question here is there precedent for this? Yani this act of taking 10 steps to your right and giving salam after wudu as an integral part of wudu, there's no precedent for this. There's no precedent for this act. So therefore this is an additional act altogether that would require solid evidence of the type that we've been reading for hadith. This is not found, so we don't. You okay with that? So that's the first condition. First condition is what people, that it comes under a precedent. Second condition is that it's not too weak and it can be corroborated. Third condition is if you're acting upon whatever statement is found within a weak hadith, you act upon it with the intention of reward and knowing wholeheartedly that this is not proven. knowing wholeheartedly that this is not proven, but you seek reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very generous. If He wants to give, He will give. Finish. That you act upon it knowing that it's not proven, but with the hopes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His compassion, mercy, generosity, will give you the reward that is mentioned in the hadith. Come, let's continue. We're moving on now. So what Imam Nawawi rahimahullah has done, look, he's given you the 9 companions, the narrations. He's ended with this comment: those who memorize hadith agree that it is a weak hadith, even though it is narrated through many parts. Now the next paragraph, he's almost trying to corroborate this hadith by saying, whether it's proven or not, there is a precedent for compiling 40 hadiths, and that precedent is set by whom? The early scholars. Yeah. So let's look at this. It says, look, the people of knowledge have compiled numerous books in this area. So whether the hadith is proven or not, it is a fact that scholars prior to Imam Nawawi, from the early generations, from the tabi'in, had already started compiling 40 hadiths as a genre of writing. Yeah? So he says, the first person that I know to have compiled in this area was Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. Yeah, I think it's with the alif lam. Yeah, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, who was from Marw, or Merv, probably modern day Turkmenistan, and was a student of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Okay. He died in the year 181 Hijri. He died in the year 181 Hijri. Then later Ibn Aslam al-Tusi, a lordly man of knowledge. Where is Tus? Anyone know what Tus is? Where's Tus? Tus is where Imam Ghazali rahimahullah is from. It's in modern day Iran, in the Khorasan province, northeast. Then later Hassan bin Sufyan al-Nasa'i, or Nasawi is known as. Ibn Aslam al-Tusi died in 242. Hassan bin Sufyan al-Nasa'i. Where is Nasa? You know what Nasa is? I know. Modern day Turkmenistan. He died in 303. Then we have Abu Bakr al-Ajurri. Yeah, it should be with 2 R's. Yeah, Ajurri. Ajur refers to his profession. Ajur is a clay pot that we have in the subcontinent elsewhere that you put water in. Familiar with it? Clay pots, pottery, maybe pottery like that. That's Ajur. Or Ajur also refers to bricks. So basically, you're taking clay and then you're putting it in a kiln and you're baking bricks and things of this nature, pottery. And then we have Abu Bakr Muhammad bin Ibrahim al-Asfahani, who died in 466. Al-Asfahan, Iran, used to be the capital of a number of Persian dynasties. And then we have Ad-Daraqutni, who died in 385. Ad-Daraqutni. So Dar in Arabic means house, and Qutn means cotton. House of cotton. This was an area in Baghdad. This was an area in Baghdad called Daraqutni, and he used to live in that area. So the association is to that. We have Al-Hakim, who died in 405. He was a student of Ad-Daraqutni, by the way. Al-Hakim. Al-Hakim was from Nishapur. Al-Hakim Abu Abdullah Nishapuri. Nishapur, Tus, all in the Khorasan region, modern day northeast of Iran. Then we have Abu Nu'aym. Abu Nu'aym was also from Asfahan, who died in 430. Then we have Abu Abdul Rahman as-Sulami, the famous Sufi, who died in 412.
He's the kind of the book, right?
That's the one with the Futuwa book. That's right. Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami.
Is this Ibn al-Mubarak? Is this the one that had that miracle where he's
The garden, his father, grandfather, that one?
no, the one where he wanted to go on Hajj. I don't know if it's him, but I heard he wanted to go on Hajj, but he gave his money away because someone needed sadaqah.
It's possible. It's possible.
And then he felt very sad. The caravan left. And when they came back, they said, "Thank you very much for going Hajj with us."
It's possible. So Abu Abdurrahman as-Sulami from Banu Sulaim. This is to his tribe. Then we have number Abu Sa'id al-Malini, who died in 412 as well. Al-Malin, they say, is a district in Herat, a district of Herat, which is in modern day Afghanistan. Then we have Abu Uthman al-Sabuni, who died in 449. His association is what? Sabun, what Sabun? Soap. So his family must have been in the business of making soap. Abdullah bin Muhammad al-Ansari, who died in 480. And then Abu Bakr al-Bayhaqi, who died in 458. Yeah, Bayhaq is also a city near Nishapur and Tus in the same province of Iran. Modern day goes by the name as Sabzawar. And a whole lot of other people of the first and later generations who cannot be enumerated. So in short, what's he said here? Imam Nawawi, having accepted that the hadith of collecting or preserving 40 hadith is weak, he wants to tell you that scholars right from the early period, like I said, Ibn Mubarak is early, 181, so he's from the Khairul Qurun, he's from the best of generations, the last one though, right? And as he mentioned, there's what? An entire succession of scholars post Ibn al-Mubarak who have collected 40 hadiths on various topics. So Ibn Mubarak, for example, his collection of 40 is on the virtues and importance of jihad. Yeah? Do we know of any 40 hadiths other than this one I'm studying? What other 40 hadiths do we know? We don't know of any. Huh? 40 hadith on archery. What else? Come on. Testing you guys. There, Turath Publications in London, so this is a publishing house based in London, actually has a 40 series. I don't know what number they are now, maybe on the 10. They're on the 10. So they've got 10 different collections of 40 hadiths. They've got 40 hadith on marriage, because why not? It sells, right? Right. So 40 hadith on marriage by Mullah Ali Qari. They've got 40 hadith on Quran, virtues of the Quran. They've got 40 hadith on the virtues of Salawat ala Nabi. They've got 40 hadith of Ibn Asakir, which is on the virtues of the mothers of the believers, and Ummahatul Mu'mineen, on the Prophet's wives. They've got, what other 40 hadiths are there? Hey.
Is there a collection of hadith with sayings from Allah that aren't in the Quran?
40 hadith Qudsi, Asan, right? Any other ones? So look, here I'll just mention this. Scholarship, as it develops, starts to innovate. So post An-Nawawi rahimahullah, you've got someone like Ibn Hajar Asqalani, and you've got his teacher Abu Tahir as-Silafi, who collected 40 hadiths from 40 shuyukh that go back to 40 companions in 40 different cities. Yeah, just to innovate, just to try and bring like the rarest of the narrations. So like for example, this is a hadith that is Musalsal bil Baghdadiyin. For example, this is a hadith that once there was no Baghdad in the time of the companions, but whichever tabi'i or tabi tabi'i came into Baghdad, from that time onwards, I'm going to make sure that this narration does not leave Baghdad. Hadith of Ashford. So there's a Sheikh of Ashford from his teacher, like that. Yeah? So these are the sort of things that they're doing. We call it innovation. Innovating. Okay? Ibn Asakir has a book called Al-Arba'un al-Buldaniyat. Buldan meaning cities. So he's narrating 40 hadith from 40 different shuyukh in 40 different cities, going back to 40 companions, settlements, like that. These are all things that they're doing. We okay with that? Yeah, actually, I remember now. The first compilation of 40 hadith which were published is the 40 hadith of Shah Waliullah. Yeah, I remember that one. 40 hadith of Shah Waliullah. I'll just mention one thing about that 40 collection, is that those are 40 hadiths that were not collected by Shah Waliullah. He simply narrated them from his teachers. And those 40 hadith go back to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu via a weak transmission. Yeah, if the Turath had a better edition of the 40, it's mentioned at the beginning. Shahullah mentions that I'm narrating these 40 from my teacher Abu Tahir Madani, from his father Ibrahim al-Burani, back all the way to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu.
Well, some Arba'in they have in the collections, they're not actually saying that the Prophet ﷺ, they're kind of narrations of Sahaba, aqwal of Sahaba, but they're still considered.
Yeah, so look, a question over here is statements of companions, why are they being treated as hadith for? So here the assumption is, when a companion, just like we said a tabi'i, when a tabi'i is narrating directly from the Prophet ﷺ, what do we assume? There has to be a link, because he obviously didn't see the Prophet ﷺ, because if he did, he'd be a companion. Right? Likewise, when a companion says something about the religion that cannot be known via the aql, the intellect, and said companion is known not to have resorted to transmission from the people of the book, then where else could it have come from? For example, if a companion is saying that in hellfire there is a valley, and in that valley there's X, Y, Z, and this companion, like I said, this cannot be known by the aql. This statement that in hellfire there is a particular, let's say, mountain, or there's a particular valley in which X, Y, Z happens, this is not deduction from the intellect. And this companion, like I said, is known not to resort to transmission from people of the book. There's no other way that he would have got this other than the Prophet ﷺ. So in that sense, this is hukman. They say hukman, as in this is treated as a elevated report, meaning as though the Prophet ﷺ said it. That's what this is, yeah? I'll mention maybe three arba'in works from the subcontinent. Two of them are by the Mughal ruler Aurangzeb rahmatullah alayh, Aurangzeb Alamgir, the mighty Mughal who's notorious nowadays, gets a lot of bad rep. Aurangzeb rahmatullah alayh, before he became a ruler or seized kingdom from his father, was the governor of Gujarat, and he wrote a collection of 40 on statecraft, on governance. And then after he became ruler of the subcontinent, he wrote another collection of 40 on the same topic, on the importance of what? On the importance of good governance and on statecraft. My teacher has a copy of this, and I've been asking him to give me one, but he's not giving it to me. Partly because it's gilded in gold. Another edition actually that Turath has published by the Abdul Kabir, which was quite famous amongst the Mughals themselves, it was taught to Akbar, to the Mughal rulers, was the 40 hadith by Al-Jami, Abdurrahman Jami. It's been published, I think, a couple of years ago by Mufti Ibrahim Taymuri. So this has 40 hadith on good character, but after every hadith you've got a ruba'i, 4 lines of poetry in Persian. So this was something that was studied amongst the princes. Arba'in by Jami, this is part of the Turath series. It's been translated by Dr. Isa Waili. It's good. The other one that perhaps is a unique one is by Al-Hazrat Ahmad Riza Khan. Al-Hazrat has a collection of 40 hadith on the prohibition of sajda tahiyya. Sajda tahiyya is to prostrate to someone or to something, not for the purpose of worship, but for the purpose of showing deference and respect. This is haram in our madhab, though it was permissible in the previous religions. For example, we know in Surah Yusuf, when Prophet Yusuf has a dream of the stars, right? Of the 11 stars, the sun and the moon prostrating to him, which was a metaphor that took place later on when his own family, after he'd become governor of Egypt, and the whole story comes to an end. It's that. So this is called Sajda Ta'zimeen. Ta'zim means respect and deference. So he collects 40 hadith prohibiting it, and he has over like 100 narrations of fuqaha, so statements from the fatwa saying it's all haram. Yeah. So in any case, we digress. Yeah. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah will explain to you what he wants to do.
You know, we said that the Imam Nawawi is explaining why, even though the original hadith is weak, that there's many scholars.
There's a precedent for it, yeah.
There's precedent. Does the precedent itself not strengthen the hadith then, does it?
That's the point, yeah. But the point here would be, for Imam Nawawi, even if there wasn't a hadith,
Yeah.
let's say the hadith isn't there. The fact that scholars have collected 40 hadith is now something that's a precedent. Yeah. So if you look at hadith writing, so the different ways in which a hadith has been compiled, right, along the Sahih, the Sunan, the Jami, the Masanid, the Musannafat, right? There's no textual basis for all these forms of writing. No, there isn't. But they did it anyway because they saw that there was a practical need for it. That's all this is.
Any significance with the number 40?
Good. This is a question that they've asked. This is a question they've asked. Why 40? Why 40? Huh? 40. Why 40? No, that one was when Musa went up in the heaven, went to Atikaf with his God. No. So some scholars have said the 40 may have to do with a statement by a famous Sufi called Bishr Hafi, who talked about paying zakat on the hadith that you study. It's a statement that he said to students of hadith, that give zakat of this hadith you're studying. So how do you give zakat? So actually, let me ask this question first. What's the rate of zakat that we have to pay? 2.5, but he mentioned I was getting that, right? In Arabic, it's a 40th. How much do you give? Because we don't do percentages, we do shares. So you're giving a 40th. How much are you giving? 40th of the amount that you have. So Bishop Hafi said to the people of Hadith, Ya Ashab al-Hadith, O people of Hadith, give zakat on this Hadith. And then he says this, for every 40 Hadith you study, at least practice on one. Give the zakat. So how do you give zakat on the Hadith? Per the 40 Hadith that you study, or every 40 Hadith, at least act upon one. Yeah. So this is not a statement of the Prophet ﷺ, it's just something that he said. Yeah. And the precedent, of course, is zakat. Right? Yeah. Come. We will come to what Imam Nawawi rahimahullah wants to collect his 44. That will come in the paragraph after the one I'm going to read right now. It's going to come at the bottom paragraph of page 3. Let's continue then. So Imam Nawawi rahimahullah then said, I sought the choice of Allah. Yeah, this is a strange translation, right? I sought the choice of Allah, and he meant istikhara. So he's put it in brackets. The translator has put it in brackets. فَاسْتَخَرْتُ اللَّهَ, he's translated it as I sought the choice of Allah through the dua known as istikhara as to the matter of collecting 40 hadith. So just to go back to your question, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah noted the precedent, and then he said, I didn't stop to write the book, I did istikhara with Allah. Okay, so he said, look, فَاسْتَخَرْتُ اللَّهَ, or I sought the choice of Allah through the dua known as istikhara as to the matter of collecting 40 hadith, modeling myself on the noted people of knowledge and guardian memorizers of Islam. Meaning, I want to follow in the footsteps, this precedent. Should I also collect a collection of 40 like those have done before me, and that I can be also counted amongst them. And then he says, the people of knowledge are unanimously agreed that it is permissible to act upon a weak hadith in the excellencies of action. Excellence actually meaning fadail a'mal. However, along with that, I do not depend on this hadith. I don't depend on the weak hadith. He says, but rather on his saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the Sahih hadith, let whoever you witness convey it to those who are absent. And his words, may Allah illuminate a man who hears my words and keeps them in mind and then conveys them just as he heard them. Full stop. Okay, so the Imam in this paragraph is still talking about his decision, his resolve and justification for collecting the 40 hadiths. He's not telling you what he's doing in the 40, he's like, should I collect the 40 or not? So the first thing he mentions is he made istikhara. What we call istikhara. And what is istikhara, people? Do we know what it involves? What does the istikhara involve?
Consulting Allah.
Consulting Allah? Ahsan, right? So istikhara is a specific prayer. So you pray 2 rak'ah, nafil, 2 rak'ah nafil, with the intention of istikhara. And after the 2 rak'at, then you raise your hands and you will make a dua. Allahumma inni astakhiru bi ilmik. I'll send the dua to the Imam. He'll put it on your Telegram groups or your WhatsApp groups. Yeah? So it's a dua that is recommended. And then what do? It's preferable you make the dua at night before you go to sleep. And then what do? You see a dream? Martin Luther King. So the thing is, seeing a dream is not necessary. Seeing a dream is not necessary. They say you should continue up to 7 days. If you don't see any clear sign, continue for 7 days. After 7 days, even if you don't see a dream, it's good if you saw a dream, alhamdulillah. If you have a clear indicator during the day, alhamdulillah. But if not, then you go with what your heart is inclined towards. So there's 2 things here. Number 1, seeing a dream is not necessary. Number 2, you don't have to pay someone. This is, I don't know, it's a thing amongst the Desi culture. I'll pay someone to make istikhara. It's between you and Allah. You're not paying anyone. You're not subletting this to anyone. It's between you and Allah. So this is istikhara, right? There are 2 things that a person should be doing, or it's highly, highly, highly recommended that a person do when confronted with choices that are particularly difficult for him and otherwise. You make istikhara, and the second thing is called istishara in Arabic. Istikhara, istishara. So istikhara is what, like I said, at night before you go to it's preferable, right? Preferable before you go to sleep, you pray 2 rak'ah and then you make dua, the special dua that's mentioned, right, in Sahih Bukhari and elsewhere. And then, like I said, you'll be inclined towards something. The second thing is istishara. Istishara is mashwara. Mashwara, you consult with others. But here also in mashwara, I would say to you, it's important that you consult with the right people. Who should you make consultation from is also a very important chapter, a very important factor here. You don't make mashwara with every Tom, Dick and Harry. You make mashwara from people who are knowledgeable, people who are experienced, people who have an idea, people who have your best interest at heart. Now think about this. If you made istikhara and you made istishara, thereafter you took a step, you undertook something and turned out not to be favorable, not to be the way you wanted. You say this is from Allah. This is from Allah. And there's a saying that the Arabs have, which is مَا خَابَ مَنِ اسْتَخَارَ وَلَا نَدِمَ مَنِ اسْتَشَارَ. Right? A person who made istikhara is never disgraced by God. And the person who made istishara will never have to regret his decision. So there's no regrets, there's no remorse. Because you did what was otherwise possible for you as a human being. You did everything that was in your capacity. So you make istikhara, you make istishara. Yeah, like this. So Imam Nawawi rahimahullah mentions, I sought the choice of Allah. The choice of Allah meaning, should I collect the 40 hadith or should I not do this? Is it something worthwhile or is it not something worthwhile? That's what he means by istikhara over here. So I sought the choice of Allah through the dua known as istikhara as to the matter of collecting 40 hadith, modeling myself on the noted people of knowledge and guardian memorizers of Islam. Yeah, noted people of knowledge mean the ulama, and guardian memorizers of Islam mean the hadith experts.
Sheikh, about istikhara, I thought you make a decision and then you say, I'm going to do this. Is it correct?
No, you ask Allah that should I do this or not do this? Yeah, or if you look at the wording of the dua, yeah, because oh Allah, I seek your guidance on this affair. Right? I seek benevolence from the treasures of your knowledge, and this. That this thing, if it is good for me, then incline my heart towards it and make it easy for me. And if it isn't, then repulse my heart from it, repel it, and don't make it easy for me and shut it off and so on. So you look at the wording you use, it's clear now.
But could you use the repulse part to possibly just to signal, to indicate, to get a sign about which way you should go?
Yeah.
So if you go this way and everything it's very difficult for you to go this certain path that you went.
That's not
You realize
istikhara.
that you're going the wrong way.
No, so that's not istikhara, that's dua then. Like if it's something that you want finished and you want it, then you can make dua that Allah make this easy for me. But if it's not meant to be, then put obstructions in this.
Wouldn't istikhara do the same thing as well?
Istikhara is choice between two things. Yeah, should I or should I not? Here this guy clearly wants something. Istikhara is when like, should I do this or not? I'm 50-50. This person here is like, I actually want this to happen. So Allah make this happen. But if it's not meant to be, then cut it off sooner than later. Is there a difference?
But wouldn't it be the same, that part of the dua where it says make it if it's not right for
That
you?
part
then
of the
make it
dua
hard?
is a different one. So istikhara, look, khiyar means choice. Khiyar. So it begins, or to put it in your vernacular, ikhtiyar. Ikhtiyar meaning choice. So here is like, should I or should I not? I'm kind of indifferent, or I'm genuinely confused of what I should do. Go here or not go here. So that's what istikhara is about.
Then what's the point of that part of the dua where it says, if it's good for me, hasten me towards it?
No,
It's
so
not
if
good
it's
for me,
so,
then
no, so it's the wording. It's worded like this. Yeah, that should I do X or should I not do Y, like that. Yeah. So look at the wording, then I think it will become clear of word. Right. Where are we now? So then he says, okay, the people of knowledge are unanimously agreed that it's permissible to act upon a weak hadith. We mentioned this. However, now this is Imam Nawawi rahimahullah corroborating. He is corroborating the hadith, or he's justifying now the practice of collecting the hadith, not on the weak hadith that we just read of the 9 companions, but these hadiths. These are all absolutely proven. There is Bukhari Muslim. What is this? He says, however, along with that, I do not depend on this. When he says this hadith, what does it mean? The hadith of collecting the 40, you'll be resurrected on the day of judgment, the weak hadith. But rather on his saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the Sahih hadith, let whoever you witness convey it to those who are absent. This hadith is part of a very famous sermon known as the Khutbah Hajjatul Wida. It's the final sermon. People have actually made an entire study out of this. It's a very nice narration. It's one of the last public speeches the Prophet ﷺ gave. Yeah. So in it he mentions Ala falyuballigh ash-shahidul ghaiba, that those who are present in the Mount of Arafat listening to this, let them convey to those who are absent. لِيُبَلِّغْ الشَّاهِدُ الْغَائِبِ. This is obviously in the context, but if you take it out of the context, what does this hadith say? It says those who heard, those who witnessed, those who heard should now deliver it to others, inform others. That's what it says. So he says, look, let whoever of you witness convey it to those who are absent. And then the second hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, may Allah illuminate a man who hears my words and keeps them in mind and then conveys them just as he heard them. So this is another hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ makes dua. For whom? He says, those who hear my words and keeps them in mind, and then so there's three things here. The Prophet ﷺ is making dua. Okay, let's start with the dua. May Allah illuminate a man. Naddara Allahu mra'an. May Allah illuminate the person. What does it mean, illuminate? So this is an expression in Arabic. Illuminate the face of someone. May Allah make someone's face shine. It means may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep happy and prosperous, make him prosperous. So to make someone's face bright, to make someone's face happy, is a way of saying may Allah protect, may Allah provide, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala feed, give sustenance basically, give sustenance to someone, and to keep them away from any harm. These are the associated meanings with illuminating someone's face. So the dua to illuminate a person's face is connected with what? Someone who hears the Prophet's words. نَضَّرَ اللَّهُ إِمْرَأً سَمِعَ مَقَالَتِي. So سَمِعَ مَقَالَتِي, may Allah illuminate the face or the countenance of someone who heard what I have said. فَوَعَاهَا, second now condition, which is translated as keeps them in mind. Yani keeps my words in mind. Here, maybe a better translation of wa'a isn't simply to keep it in mind, but is to understand it. It is to internalize it. So someone who heard the Prophet's words and then they memorized it, they internalized it, right? Which is what he's put, keep it in mind and then conveys it to others. فَبَلَّغَهَا كَمَا سَمِعَهَا, and then he conveys those words just as he heard them. So three things. You hear the Prophet's words, you memorize it, you internalize it, and then the third thing you do is you convey it as you heard it, as it came to you. Exact wording. So these three things merits this dua of the Prophet ﷺ, which is to keep you happy, to keep you happy and to provide for you comfort. Now Imam Nawawi rahimahullah continues by saying, among the people of knowledge, there are those who collected 40 hadiths. So now he's coming to explaining what is it that Imam Nawawi has done. So all of this that we just read was justification of collecting 40 hadiths. So he is now determined through not just mashwara but istikhara, and through having much solid foundation, more solid foundations than the weak hadith he mentioned, which is the two hadiths that I just mentioned right now, where there is a legal command for those who hear, for those who witness, to convey to others. We've been doing fiqh, al-amru bil-wujub wal-nahyu bil-tahrim. So there's a command, there's an imperative. Let those who are present convey to those who are absent. So there's an obligation of sorts that he has to convey to others. And the second one is the prophetic dua, that whoever heard my words, understood them, internalized them, ought then to convey to others, so that you may receive this dua of the Prophet. So then he says, among the people of knowledge, and amongst the ulama, there are those who collected 40 hadith on the principles of the deen. Some of them on the derivative rulings, some on jihad, some on zuhud, doing without, some on courtesies, some of them on public addresses, all of which are worthy purposes. May Allah be pleased with them, with those who purpose them. Right? So he, in this one sentence, is telling you how we discussed this. I mentioned to you that different scholars collected the 40 hadith for different things. Okay, so he mentions here, look, some on the principles of deen meaning on aqaid, usul al-deen over here, Some people collected 40 hadith on aqa'id or certain aspects of the aqidah, and some of them on derivative rulings in the furu', fiqhi masail. Some on the matters of fiqh, some on jihad, some on zuhud. This is your Abu Abdurrahman Sulami's collection is on zuhud, by the way, right? On zuhud, he's explained what zuhud is, which is doing without. That's the translation of zuhud that we've gone for here. Some on courtesies, meaning adab, how to behave, matter of morality and such things. And then some of them on public addresses, khutbah. All of which are worthy purposes. May Allah be pleased with those who purpose them. My view, now Imam Nawawi rahimahullah explaining what he's doing here is, he said, my view was that I should collect 40 hadith more important than all of that. So Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is saying, yes, the Salaf collected hadiths on 40 of jihad, 40 of of zuhud, 40 on XYZ, 40 on, like we said, whether you should pray or not pray, or fada'il and so on, the importance of the Quran. Imam Nawawi is saying, my view is that I'm not going to collect on any of these, but I'm going to collect on a topic that's more important than all of those, right? I.e., this is the bit I want to highlight, i.e., 40 hadith encompassing all of that, every one of which is one of the great principles of the deen, and which the people of knowledge have described in such terms as the deen revolves around it, or it is a half of Islam, or a third of it. So what's he saying here? Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is now explaining what types of hadith or the theme of his 40 hadith. He's saying that I am specifically looking at hadiths regarding which the scholars have said that this hadith is highlighting a fundamental of the religion. What is it? A fundamental of the religion. Or as he mentioned, this hadith is so central to the religion that the entirety of the religion pivots around it. Or this is half of all religion. Or this is third of all religion. Go back to his hamd, go back to the khutbah where he said the Prophet ﷺ, his speech was characterized by what? Pithy speech, we said. Jawami al-Kalim. So he's using this to now specifically collect 40 hadiths regarding which scholars have said all of religion can be found in this one hadith. Right? All of the religion is founded on this one hadith. All this one hadith covers all of religion. Those are the type of hadiths that he's looking at. Are we okay with this? So he says, look one more time. My view was that I should collect 40 hadith more important than all of that, meaning all of the above topics that he just highlighted in the previous sentence. I.e., now he's spelling out what it is. 40 hadith encompassing all of that. Every one hadith of which is one of the great principles of the religion, of the deen, and which the people of knowledge, the ulama, have described in such terms as the deen revolves around it. All of Islam revolves around this one hadith. Or the hadith is described as a half of Islam, or a third of it.
So before the compilation, do you think he knew which one they were? Or the Istikhara included that?
Good. So it's good you mentioned this. So here, let's talk a little about the genesis of the 40, and with which we will stop today's lesson, right? Because I believe I'm going to go over time. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah took up the position of Shaykh al-Hadith. I'm going to use the term Shaykh al-Hadith of Madrasa Ashrafiyya. It's a very important madrasa. And the scholar prior to him, who he always looks up to, is someone called Ibn Salah. Al-Hafidh Ibn Salah al-Shahrazuri, famous muhaddith Shafi'i, just like Imam Nawawi rahimahullah.
Syria.
Huh?
Which country?
Damascus. Madrasa Ashrafiyya is just outside Jami' Amawi. Well, Imam Ibn Salah was from Shahrazur, which is in Iraq. Kurdi, ethnically Kurdish, if I'm not mistaken. So he collects in a sitting, because he was a teacher of hadith, like I mentioned, he would dictate. He dictated a majlis, meaning a particular class, on this very topic, which is what? Hadiths that our scholars have said all of the religion encompasses in it. Or it's pithy speech to the extent to which half of the religion, or a quarter of the religion, or all of religion encompasses this. And he collected there 26 hadith. How many? 26 hadith. These 26 hadith that Ibn Salah rahimahullah had dictated in a gathering, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah himself includes it in a work of his, which I don't know if it's been translated before, called Bustan al-Arifin. It's been translated. Huh? It's been translated? I don't know. Okay. In Bustan al-Arifin, it's basically his, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah's reduction of sorts of the Risala Qushayriyah. Risala Qushayriyah, if you heard of it, it's an introduction to Sufism, speaking about Sufis and their ideas. So it's his kind of reduction of it. He didn't complete it. The book looks incomplete. But in Bustan al-Arifin, he mentions actually this, that Ibn Salah once dictated a lesson, and he mentioned these, and then he lists the 26 hadith as well. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah lists the 26 hadith. Thereafter, these 26 hadiths, Imam Nawawi presents in Al-Azkar. If you guys, this has been published or not? Yeah, Turath, I think, published Al-Azkar. So in Al-Azkar, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah at the end mentions the same theme, and under it he mentions 30 hadith. How many? 30. So it's in his mind, the idea of the 40 hadiths, or these are special hadiths that are Jawami'ul Kalim, and these are the hadiths with these themes in, and then he mentions 30 in there. So if you go back to your other card, you'll find 30 in there. Thereafter, Imam Nawawi writes this book, Al-Arba'in, in which he adds 12. So it's 42. Yeah. The 40 hadiths, the number 40 here is a round figure, okay? Otherwise, if you don't say that Imam Nawawi was not good at maths, okay? There's 42 hadith in this collection, right? It's a round figure. So we've got 42. Does that make sense? So Bustan Arifin, even Ibn Salah is taking from someone else. That mentioned 12. I think Imam Khattabi in one of his works collects about 12 hadiths on this theme that then Ibn Salah adds to, that then Nawawi adds to rahimahullah in Al-Adhkar, and then obviously in the Arba'in, 42. And what is often studied more or less post Nawawi rahimahullah is Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, who's one of the famous commentators. Right? There's two commentators that pretty much like are the primary, if you like, commentators of the Nawawi Arba'in. Ibn Rajab Hanbali in his Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam, which also has been translated by Turath, known as the Compendium by Ibn Rajab Hanbali. Yeah. So the Ibn Rajab, he completes it to 50. So Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he adds 8 extra hadith, the 42 that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. So he finds that, okay, on this theme itself, you can maybe add another couple numbers. So he completes it to 50. So the Arba'in actually is Khamseen. Okay? It becomes Khamseen, but through Ibn Rajab rahimahullah.
He keeps the original 42 and he adds
Yes, so just like Nawawi rahimahullah keeps Ibn Salah, just like Ibn Salah kept Al-Khattabi, right, and added to it. So then Nawawi rahimahullah added to Ibn Salah, and then Ibn Rajab rahimahullah added to Nawawi rahimahullah. Is that okay? Right, okay, we will, shall we just do one more? Have we got time for one more sentence? Let's do one more sentence to the next lesson, then we can move on to the book, right? Moreover, I decided to insist on these 40 being sahih, the majority of them being from the 2 sahih books of Bukhari and Muslim, and that I should mention them without the chains of transmission in order to make their memorization easy and to make the benefit derived from them more universal. Insha'Allah, exalted is He. So in this sentence, he mentioned 2 things. Number 1, that the 42 hadiths that he's going to mention are all sahih, majority of which are from Bukhari and Muslim. Regarding, let's make this one point. The second point is, he's not mentioned the isnad. Why has he not mentioned the isnad? He says to make the book more accessible, to allow for students to memorize it and to maximize the benefit from it. Beginners don't need to get involved in the quagmire of isnad analysis of who's who and all this other stuff, right? So that's the thing he mentioned. I just want to mention one observation here regarding the first point. When Imam Nawawi rahimahullah said that all of the hadiths of this book are sahih, this is a hukum akthari. This is not a universal claim, it's a majority claim. Meaning there are around 4 hadiths, I think 3 or 4 hadiths that the scholars have identified as being weak, but of the sort that can be corroborated. not of this 40 hadith, the one that we mentioned previously, not of that sort. It's the weakness that can be alleviated. So in that sense, what can we say? We can say that this is hukum akthar. Just like the 40 hadith was actually 42 hadith, if you're pedantic. Like that, out of 42 hadith, if 4 are weak, the majority is that they are sahih. Right? Even if we don't take the more critical school, like there's one hadith he'll mention by Tirmidhi, and Imam Tirmidhi himself grades the hadith. Like Imam Nawawi mentions it, Rawahu Tirmidhi, and then he mentions Tirmidhi's grading, which is Hasan. Hasan means that it's not Sahih. It's a Hasan. So it's a one below the other in that sense. Yeah? So I think that's the only thing maybe worth mentioning about this sentence, and inshallah we'll stop here. If there's any questions, I can take them. Any questions? Okay, let's stop here then. Subhanallah, bihamdihi, subhanallah.
Making istikhara in the matter of deen, so this is a good act he's doing. He's still consulting or making istikhara of Allah, even though he knows he'll be benefiting this activity.
Because
it's like, shall I fast tomorrow? Or
just like good deeds, all good deeds are not the same, all bad deeds are not the same. Yeah? There's a hierarchy. Some sins are graver than others. Some acts of goodness, some hasanat, are also more worthy than others. This is the job of the faqih, to realize how can I maximize my time. Yeah, maximizing the time, that's all. Yeah. Come with Sophia then.
In terms of the isnad, is it still scholars of hadith, are they still particular about maintaining and transmitting, as in their students having to learn the isnad? Or no?
So what happens is, around the, okay, those of you who can go, right? Class is dismissed, right? We can divide hadith transmission into 2 camps, 2 periods. What we call the period of transmission and the period of post-transmission.